Hey guys, welcome back. Behavior Strategies for Class here. This is the podcast where we empower educators with effective behavior management strategies that work. So if you are struggling in the classroom with your students, with their behaviors, you are in the right place. This is where you will learn those behavior management strategies that work. And today we're talking about some behavior management through teaching self-regulation. And this is a third in the series. And today, this episode is about how trauma affects self-regulation. Because when we think about behavior, it's easy to overlook those stories beneath the surface, right? Because behavior is communication. So what if that outburst during math wasn't defiance, but it was a nervous system stuck in survival mode? Or what if that shutdown in the hallway was a brain doing its best to protect itself? Guys, in this episode, we'll unpack how trauma affects your students' ability to regulate emotions, focus attention, and engage in learning. But more importantly, how you can support your students in healing, resilience, starting with relationship, safety, and compassion. You got this, guys. We got a ton to go over, and you are not going to want to miss this. Welcome to Behavior Strategies for Class. I am Diane Bachman, your behavior paraprofessional with over 15 years of experience working in special education. And I'm so glad you're here because I'll be teaching you about social emotional learning, behavior strategies, trauma-informed care, and more. So if you are tired of being frustrated and not knowing what to do with your students who have challenging and disruptive behavior, you're in the right place. Now, if you're ready to become more equipped to help your students learn and grow, let's listen in to today's episode. So before we get started, please leave a review, hit that subscribe button, and share this podcast with other educators that you know so we continue to learn and grow together. Now, also, I want to remind you to send in your behavior questions. I'll be starting a new segment July 9th in answering some of those behavior questions. Maybe with some of your students, you're not sure what strategies to use or maybe you've used all of them and you're not sure what else to do. Like, I would love to be able to brainstorm with you and answer some of those questions. So contact me, Diane, at behaviorstrategiesforclass.com, on Facebook, LinkedIn. I would love to connect with you there. So, what is self-regulation? So, this is the brain's ability to protect itself from the stress that trauma produces. So, really, it's an overwhelm. Like, your students' bodies are overwhelmed. They cannot process all of these things that have been going on. I think of a lot of our students. So all of these emotions and this stress comes out in their behaviors. So you have students that are in the fight mode and they're hitting and kicking you as the teacher, or they're hitting and kicking other peers. They're fighting for themselves. Or we have had other students who are in the flight mode where they're running out of their classroom, they're running out of the school building, they're running off of school grounds. And then you have those in the freeze mode where they just shut down. And that's physically. Physically, I've had students, just shut down and they're sitting under their desk. Heads down, will not engage, no talk, nothing. Others have put their heads down, sitting at their desk. Same thing. No discussion, no talking, no responsiveness, nothing. So these are all real, and I know you have seen these in your classroom as well. And we have learned how different ways to approach wherever they are in this in their episode, in this dysregulation, ultimately we want to approach them calmly. And so it's usually in your voice, it's in the body language. And so that is something that we continue to learn, how to be able to approach them. But learning the background of really how trauma affects them. And it's ultimately in the development of their brain and the stress that comes with trauma and the traumatic experiences that they have been through. Some of our students are still going through them, and that could be a divorce, that could be a sick parent, maybe a parent or grandparent is dying, from cancer. We've had students lose a sibling. We've had homelessness. We've had neglect. All of these different things are stressful, traumatic events for students. And then they come to school and we want them to learn. We want them to engage and, do their best while they're in your class, where they just cannot cope. Like some of them, it's just too much and they're too overwhelmed. And so that's when these behaviors start coming up. Because when they can't process, their body is in protection mode. And so that, of course, is affecting their ability to control their emotions. They can't focus on their learning. Some of them are impulsive. They have a hard time developing healthy relationships. And you see that a lot where, teachers, you're doing your best to reach out to those students that you see who are struggling. You're encouraging them, you're checking in with them, and all they do is lash back because you may be the only caring adult that they've had any interaction with, and they don't know what to do with that. So I would say if you are in that situation, if you have been in that situation, to continue to pour on the kindness to them, the encouragement, the acknowledgement. Because ultimately, you're still role modeling that for them. That not every adult in their life is a crazy person, a crazy, hurtful person. So that's a side note. Just keep doing what you're doing or what you have been doing. So when their brain is adapting and trying to protect itself, they get into that heightened state. They get into that survival mode. And so that's why I said, like with our students, you see all of it, that fight, flight, and freeze. And they've just, you cannot have a conversation with a student who is dysregulated. They're not going to hear you. And so you have to learn how to be able to give them time, give them that space. And mostly, obviously, when they're not hurting themselves, when they're not hurting others. I don't know if you have been in a school where they have other classrooms or a class leave the room when one student has been very dysregulated and they're not able to teach the rest of the class while that student is dysregulated. So the teacher already knows, okay, this is the point where now I have to take the rest of the classroom out. And so we have designated places for them to go because unfortunately this student is struggling in this area. So this episode is not going to be the only one they have. And so that is something that is and can be controversial. I've heard a lot of different feedback from parents and from teachers, and it is a tough situation because you obviously don't want to put the other students in a dangerous situation. But you're obviously concerned about this one who is very dysregulated, and you have to be able to somehow give them that time to finish their dysregulation. Because honestly, it doesn't last for 8 hours. And I hope and pray that you have a team that you can call and say you need support, who will come and work with that student while you're with the rest of your students, so that you can continue learning with them. Because eventually in the schools that I've been with, we are able to get that student out of that classroom and into another safe environment, so that if they need to continue with the dysregulation and they're upset and they're in a heightened state, they're in a safer place to do that. And then that allows the rest of the classroom and the teacher to get back into their classroom and back to their regular schedule and learning. So that is one way that some of the schools I've been in have handled these situations when the students are so heightened and they're in survival mode and they are ready to fight really for their lives. That's how they feel. And so you want, as much as possible, to help them feel safe. And so there's also Dr. Bruce Perry, who created the neurosequential model. And I don't know if any of you have heard about it, but he has taken some neuroscience, developmental psychology, and trauma-informed care, and that's where he created this neurosequential model. And really, he found out, researched, that the majority of brain organization is within the first 4 years of your students. So if they have experienced trauma when they were young, some of our students, like they're babies, you are learning now, like this has affected the way their brain has developed. So they are not going to learn the same way as your other students. And this is where, of course, you have different neurodivergent students. This is where we're talking about trauma and experiences that have affected their normal brain development. Sometimes it's in utero. I've worked with some students where their mom was on drugs when she was pregnant with them. This also affects the brain chemistry and the structure. And so Dr. Bruce Perry found out through a lot of his research that the importance of having positive supportive relationships and experiences for these students can actually bring healing and resilience to these students. Because again, it comes back to them feeling safe. And when they feel safe, they don't have to feel like they're in survival mode. So then they can be able to focus and engage in their learning when they're in class with you. So an amazing way this happens is through neuroplasticity. And this is where your brain never stops changing in response to learning. So through these positive relationships and experiences, you are helping create new neural pathways in your students' brains. And it's constant, right? Because you're constantly teaching them new things. Their brains are like all over the place. And all of these neural pathways are happening. And so by you providing this enriching learning environment, you're helping them in the growth of focus and creativity, and the challenges that you present to them helps stimulate those positive changes in the brain. And I think that is what's so fascinating. is that their brains are able to rewire. So there is hope. These kids, and I say these kids, those who have experienced traumatic events in their lives, like I said, some who are still experiencing it, have hope because their brains can be rewired. They can have healing. They can learn to their potential. And so some of the ways that you can do this is by being that caring adult that makes them feel safe. Because when that happens, that improves their academics, that enhances their mental health, and that helps reduce their stress. Because as you're doing all of those things, like I said before, then they don't feel like they have to be in this heightened state of survival mode, where they feel like they're ready to fight at every second, where they just have to shut down because they just can't cope. It's too much. They just can't process it all. So another way that you can help your students is by teaching them these strategies on how to deal with stress. What can they do when they feel this overload, when they feel this overwhelm, when they feel like they're very impulsive, they're very anxious, they don't know what's going to happen, they don't know where to go with all of this. I've seen a lot of students, like, their emotional is to cry, to scream, to yell. We had one student that I worked with who was in the foster care system, and man, he just wailed when he felt that overwhelm. And so there was no engaging with him, of course, when he was doing this. So we would have to just sit with him and wait it out until he was done. And then we could take him into another safe classroom where we could talk with him and process with him about, like, what just happened, what brought this on. And that's really where you want them to get to, right? Because that's really the only place that you're going to be able to teach these strategies and these skills, is when they are in that safe place, when they're in a calm place, when they have a calm body, when they have a calm voice. We've had students where we felt like, okay, they're regulated now, their body is calm, and we would, try to have a conversation, but they were still in a heightened state because the words coming out were not ready to have a conversation, a calm conversation. So then, we would give them a couple more minutes and then ask them again, are you ready to talk? Because if you're not able to process with them through this, and then be able to teach them, okay, what is something else you could have done? Or what helps make you feel calm? What can we do to help you? What do you need right now? And I know these are a lot of questions, and I'm not saying, like, throw them all out there all at the same time. But it's really coming down to, what do they need to feel safe? What do they need to get back to their learning? We've had some students ask for a snack. Some ask for a juice. We've had some ask for fidgets. We've had some students take, like, an exercise break. We've had some students who want to just read one of their favorite books. And so we honor that when they say, I need this. Obviously, if it's in the realm that we're able to answer it. We have some students, I want to go home. I need to go home. Well, that's not really something that we're able to do at that moment. So we get them to think, okay, what is it that we can do here now to help you? And sometimes we've had students say, well, I don't know. So then we kind of offer a few things and see if that works. So it's just taking time to get you to know your students. And I know this is not obviously doable for you in the middle of your classroom while you're trying to teach. So that's why I hope that you have other support that can come in and help that student who is struggling. And if you don't, that you're able to take a moment and just touch base with that student and say, you know what, I can't really have a big conversation right now, but I see you, I hear you. I really want to talk with you more later. Let's do that at X amount of time. Because just that acknowledgement really says a lot for that student. Because as you're able to process with the student, then you find out what really helps them. What helps them get down to control, to a calm state, to where they're able to get back to focusing on their learning. So to remember, the brain is truly impacted by trauma, by traumatic events that some of your students have been through, or like I said, are still walking through. And so self-regulation, again, is that brain's adapts to protect itself from the stress trauma produces. So your students have an overwhelm of emotion that they don't know what to do with. And so it comes out in behavior. And again, behavior is communication. So a good question to ask is, why are they acting like this? What's going on? What is underneath? Did something happen? Because you may not always know what exactly is happening at home. And I'm not saying like, okay, now you have to go investigate, and dig down deep and find out, because you don't have time for that. You're not there as an investigator. You're there to teach and support and challenge and help your students get to that ability to where they're able to learn as much as possible when they are not in this heightened survival mode. So again, the hope is that your brain, their brain, is capable of rewiring. That is the neuroplasticity of our brains. And the neurosequential model that Dr. Bruce Perry created tells us that the difference is the positive supportive relationships and experiences that your students can have while they're in your classroom. Because as you continue to engage with them, you challenge them, you stimulate those positive changes in their brain. So what are some ways that you can help do this as well, teaching these skills? And some of those skills are helping your students deal with stress. And this could be something you could do maybe at the end of the day, or maybe this is, something, okay, guys, this is our skill of the week. How do you relieve stress? When you're feeling stressed out, what do you do? And maybe have everyone share what they do. Have them write it down. Have them journal about it. Remind them, if they're feeling stressed out in your class, what can they do? Do you have a calm corner in the classroom where there's books, or maybe some quiet music they can listen to? Maybe they would just want to draw. Maybe they just want to sit there. Maybe they want to fidget. What do they know? What can they do when they're in your classroom and they're feeling stressed? How can you help set them up for success when they're in there? and they feel the overwhelm of emotion, what can they do? And this is all about being proactive, right? Teaching this from the get-go, giving them these skills from the get-go and continuing to build on these skills throughout the year. So I know it's summertime. Maybe you're not even thinking about school at this moment. But if you are, I want to encourage you to think about how can you teach your students how to handle stress, how to regulate themselves when they're emotionally a mess. And granted, you have some students who may just cry for a minute and they're fine. Or get upset and they're fine. Or you talk to, they're fine. I'm talking about some of your students where this is a constant struggle for them. They need hope, and they need to find hope. Well, sometimes, obviously, their home environment may not be that place. It's going to be your classroom. So how are you going to help set them up to deal with stress? So I want to leave you with this quote from Youth Dynamics. And it says, trauma is a result of an overwhelming sense of danger, powerlessness, and fear. Healing is a result of feeling safe, empowered, and supportive. And that is exactly what you do, what you can do when you help your students feel safe, empowered, and supported. Thanks so much, guys. If you have not heard the other two in the series of self-regulation, you have episode 194 and 195, so check them out. And again, a reminder, send in your questions. I would love to be able to answer them, brainstorm with you. I will be starting this new segment July 9th. So I look forward to hearing from you, and I will see you guys next week. Thanks so much for listening. I truly appreciate your support. And if I have encouraged you, motivated you to continue to learn, to support your students, even better, to help them strive in your classroom, please leave a review, hit that subscribe button so that others can see they can learn and grow here as well. Thank you.